Whether you're a faithful, long-time student of the Scriptures or a wide-eyed newcomer to the exciting world of biblical studies, I'm confident that the study session on which you're about to embark will have a deep and lasting impact on your life. Hello, everyone. I'm Tim LaHaye.
And I'm David Noebel. Welcome to our companion study of Mind Siege, the battle for truth in the new millennium. It's a title that some may label as a little futuristic or even over the top. After all, you may be thinking, I'm not in a battle. Life's pretty predictable these days. Or, no one's after my mind, maybe my money or my time, but certainly not my mind. Well, we beg to differ.
During 6 intriguing sessions, our mission is to do a little reconnaissance work, if you will, to expose the enemy and all its dangerous subtleties and thereby give you, the Christian foot soldier, powerful ammunition to defeat a very real and active enemy, the one that threatens us all.
The conflict is one that takes us as far back as we can go in recorded history. The first battlefield was the Garden of Eden, and the first casualties were Adam and Eve. Certainly human beings have always been aware that life is a battle between good and evil.
The principal question is, in this conflict, who will control your mind, God or Satan? Every day we must decide whether we will follow the wisdom of God or the wisdom of man, with tangible consequences resulting from each decision. Make no mistake, the threat is real and the battle is on. Our hope is that the truths presented in this series will provide Christians of all ages with the weapons necessary to wage a battle intelligently, strategically, and most of all, prayerfully.
Today, our generation speaks of this battle between good and evil as biblical truth versus secular humanism. In session number 1, you'll discover how secularist thinking differs from Christ-centered thinking in the arenas of sociology, psychology, biology, ethics, and philosophy.
What is the nature of the universe? Is all that exists material, or are there immaterial things such as angels and human spirits? Are faith and reason opposed to each other? How do we know things? These are some of the primary questions of philosophy.
The Marxist-Leninist and secular humanist worldviews deny the existence of anything non-material. Philosophical naturalism is the belief that only nature, the material world, exists.
I like to describe the naturalistic worldview in terms of a closed box, where the naturalist believes that if anything exists whatsoever, it exists inside of the natural order, the physical universe, and that there is nothing that exists outside of that box, and that means that there is no God.
New Agers, on the other hand, believe that everything is God and that nature is actually a manifestation of the divine. This philosophical belief is known as non-naturalism.
Naturalism holds that only the physical world exists. There are no angels, there's no God, there's no human spirituality. But in contrast to that, non-naturalism holds that everything is in essence spiritual. And this follows logically from pantheism, because if God is everything and everything is God, then nothing is simply or merely natural.
In contrast to both philosophical naturalism and non-naturalism, biblical Christian philosophy holds to supernaturalism. Christians believe that the material world is real, but they also believe in created things that surpass the physical universe, such as the soul, angels, and miracles.
Christianity is a supernatural religion, and all that means is it has nothing to do with ghosts and so on, that there is a reality that exists outside of the box that is the sum total of reality for a naturalist.
Are ethics changing, or are they absolute? Do people invent their ethics, or are the standards for right and wrong things to be discovered? How can people tell the difference between right and wrong, good and evil? Are there any standards? Most humanistic ethics advocate some form of relativistic ethics. Whether invented by the individual or by the oppressed classes, they can be altered as the situations demand. Biblical Christian ethics, however, are absolute, grounded in the character of God.
I think that we cannot truly be good without God, because in the absence of God, good and evil as such, do not exist. So without God, we cannot be good, but neither can we be evil without God. In the absence of God, everything is relative. Moral values are just expressions of personal taste, like I like vanilla, and somebody else says, well, I like chocolate. In the same way, someone says, well, I like love and mercy and compassion. Another person might say, well, I like sadism and cruelty and hurting people. And neither one is right or wrong. It's just an expression of personal taste.
The revealed ethical order can be the only true source of morality. Moral values are discovered, not invented by humans. C.S. Lewis, the famous apologist and writer, wrote, "The human mind has no more power of inventing a new value than of imagining a new primary color, or, indeed, of creating a new sun and a new sky for it to move in." Christian ethics are grounded in the character of God and are revealed in both general and special revelation, biblical law and natural law. The biblical worldview says that because humans were created in God's image, they have God's law built into their consciences. The Apostle Paul wrote in Romans 2:15 that all human beings have the work of the law written in their hearts, their conscience. Perhaps no other aspect of Christianity has come under greater attack in recent years than its view of origins.
Wherever you turn, in the school systems, on television, on our discovery and learning channels, even on our history channels, there's just a great amount of evolution being presented as scientific fact. Evolution today is more than science, I can tell you that. In fact, evolution is not even a science, it's a philosophy of science.
Evolutionary theory faces problems in every area. It's pretty well known that it doesn't fit the fossil record. The fossil record does not show this pattern of slow, gradual, step-by-step change from one kind of thing into another. It shows variation within the type. Evolutionary naturalism, the Darwinian kind of evolution, doesn't fit the genetic evidence. When you try to test it, you find you can't make the big changes. You just produce birth defects when you induce mutations in organisms. It doesn't face the molecular evidence. Michael Behe has shown how molecular structures are irreducibly complex. You can't build them up by a blind, step-by-step process. So if you go from one area to another, you see it's nothing but problems and evasions, you see, to try to answer the problems. And you go to a scientist in one specialty and he'll say, I know it's all problems here, but after all, they've got it proved in all the other areas. See, so you go to the other areas and you find that it's just as bad or worse. But the worst problem is none of these things that I've mentioned. The worst problem is that living organisms are full of complex operating systems that need a program to direct their operations. Everybody knows there has to be something instructing those billion proteins where to go and what to do. And the evolutionary science has no idea how to construct such a program, no mechanism at all.
The basic issue in psychology today revolves around the concept of soul, spirit, and mind. The atheistic, reductionistic position, by reduction here I mean you reduce the mind to the brain, you reduce the brain to matter, you reduce the matter to chemical elements and so forth, and you determine, the conclusion is man is simply matter in motion. From the Christian perspective, we argue that man is more than matter. Man is also mind, he's soul.
Unlike humanistic worldviews, which claim that guilt is the byproduct of evil social institutions, the biblical Christian worldview acknowledges the fallen nature of humans and the guilt that results from sinning against God.
If you believe that human beings are basically good and you overlook our fallen nature, then you focus simply on guilt feelings. And so humanistic psychologists, for example, don't try to address real guilt, but rather address guilt feelings. And those guilt feelings come from archaic social institutions like the family or the church, maybe outdated value systems as well. And so they address the feelings of guilt rather than real guilt itself. In contrast to that, the Christian perspective acknowledges the fallen nature of human beings, and we also want to address the feelings of guilt and the real guilt that may be behind those feelings of guilt as well. We recognize that real guilt comes from our failure to love God and love our neighbor. And so, in contrast to a humanistic perspective that says that we need to redefine or repress guilt and guilt feelings, the Christian perspective acknowledges human responsibility, it calls for repentance, and it seeks reconciliation with God and with human beings.
Every sociologist acknowledges the existence of certain social institutions, such as family, church, and government. Sociologists differ, however, when describing the origin of these institutions and their relationship to the individual. Whereas atheistic worldviews see humans as simply evolving animals, Christians believe that people are created in God's image.
One of the fundamental ways in which Christian sociology differs from humanistic approaches, whether Marxist, New Age, or simply atheistic, is its affirmation of individual freedom and responsibility. While humanistic approaches hold that society determines people's consciousness and actions, Christianity believes that while society does influence people, they have the freedom to choose between right and wrong, and to shape society.
Christian sociology values both the individual and society. People must recognize the consequences for the choices they make, both individually and corporately. They are ultimately answerable to God for the direction in which society is led through the institutions of family, church, and state.
As you just saw, the differences between humanistic thinking and biblical truth are like night and day. And the 5 topics we highlighted are just a few of the many aspects of our culture that have been infiltrated by secular humanism.
Sometimes this dominant worldview appears to be omnipresent, with buzzwords popping up everywhere. Consider these catchphrases: political correctness, sensitivity training, socialized medicine,
No-fault divorce, partial birth abortion, feminism, and a vast right-wing conspiracy. The list is endless. And that's why we believe every pro-moral citizen needs to understand and expose secular humanism for the lie that it really is.
In our next session, we'll explore America's godly heritage and uncover the beginnings of secular humanism in our country. Please join us for the continuation of this extremely important series.